New York City jazz organist and pianist Brian Charette has solidified his place as a leading voice in modern jazz. Known for his inventive artistry and dynamic performances, he's also a Hammond U.S.A. and Cellar live recording artist. He's currently ranked number 2 for organ and number 6 for keyboards in the 2024 Downbeat Critics Poll, reflecting his enduring influence in the jazz world. A recent album, Jackpot, recorded at Rudy Van Gelder's studio, received 4 stars from Downbeat and charted prominently on Jazzweek. He also has another album called You Don't Know Jack, which came out on December 6, 2024. He's also a prolific composer, educator, and author whose talents have graced stages alongside luminaries like Joni Mitchell, Paul Simon, and Chaka Khan. So, Brian, good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you too. We've
Happy
played together too.
Happy 2025.
Happy 2025.
Brian, I was thinking about our interview coming up today, and you're the first organist I'm going to be talking to, and the last 5 years in the music have been kind of devastating as far as
Yeah, of
losing Joey D,
course.
and we've also lost Lonnie Smith, Dr. Lonnie Smith, and
Yeah,
Reuben Wilson as well.
yeah.
So talk about what their music means to you, and if you've had any connections with them personally, we would love to hear about it.
Okay. So I knew all of those guys very, very well. And I would say that I was close with them. One by one, Reuben Wilson, Love Bug, is big record, right? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, with George
Um,
Coleman, right?
yeah, who I
Mhm.
also know, obviously. Um, and I learned to play organ in Harlem. So Reuben would always be hanging out up there at Showman's at 125th and Morningside. So my formative years learning to play the Hammond organ with the pedals, Reuben was there. Uh, Lonnie, I knew very well from going to the NAMM show because we were both Hammond artists. We've played on concerts together, both of our bands. He was a really enigmatic man, very calm, very calm. Joseph DiFrancesco, I think I played in his last band, actually. Um, and he was fond of my organ playing, which might be the biggest validation of my organ playing that I've ever had, you know, because to me, he was technically the best Hammond organist that has ever played that instrument. Um, and we had a band together. It's not like we had a band together, but I was playing a lot of gigs with him. And he would have me play electric piano sometimes. I would play Hammond organ sometimes. Sometimes I would play Hammond organ and he would play saxophone and trumpet or
Hmm.
sing. So he was really getting into the horns at the end of his life. Um, we lost him very tragically, obviously. Um, I knew his wife. I know his wife very well. She's also one of the best road managers that I've ever worked with. So precise. And they had a lovely relationship. I know his mom and dad. Dad has also just left us, Papa John. So I miss all those guys, and they taught me a lot by being around them.
Do you feel like you're kind of carrying the weight as the next generation in a sense? Because truth be told, I feel like you and Pat Bianchi, it's on the two of your shoulders in a sense, among Samuel Hell and other players. But when I think about organists today, those are the names that come to mind for
I
me.
don't feel pressure like that. And, what I've learned, Abe, from thinking about things like this is that there's so many amazing organists all over the world. And in the parts of the world where they are someone's version of that. So I'm also great friends with Pat. I love his radio show. He plays my albums. I I feel like the organ community is friendly. I'm just going to get my cup of coffee while I talk. Is it okay?
Oh, no, no, of course, of course. Yeah,
Uh,
no, I know what you're saying. I was
I
actually talking
don't.
to someone.
I never thought about it like that, I guess.
Well, it's a good point you said that because I was actually talking to someone at a bar this past weekend and we were talking about all the great jazz guitarists of today. And
Uh,
I'm like, there's probably hundreds, if not maybe 1,000 around the world that are just so amazing. People just don't know who they are in a sense.
yeah.
Just because they
And
never.
a lot of who, I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, go ahead.
No, 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 well, just no, just because they never got the exposure and they're just they just want to play because they want to play, but it's just not on their agenda, I suppose. But they just never got the notoriety. But they're out there. We just don't know them.
That's what I was going to say. And the difference between being someone who plays really music well, the difference between someone who plays music really well and is well known and someone who plays music really well who's not that well known is so small. So many little things can shape that. Where you are geographically, I think matters, although maybe less now. But there's a lot of new young organ players that we don't even necessarily know about that in however many years it will be, someone will be asking them this question too.
Yeah. So, what drew you to the organ originally? Was it a specific artist, or was there a moment in your life, something else entirely?
I didn't really play the organ at all until I moved to New York in 1994. I was very interested in the band Tower of Power. And when I first became aware of Hammond organ, it was from listening to that group with Chester Thompson,
Okay.
who I might even see in San Francisco in a couple weeks because we're both playing. I'm playing right after him at uh, Piedmont Piano Company in Oakland on the 1st, I think, of February.
Yeah. I mean, do you think it's you kind of have to approach the organ and you're kind of balancing a traditional role in a sense because of all the history? Is that important before you start quote unquote innovating?
To be honest, Dave, in the past, I had been trying more to be adventurous in my harmonic choices. I'm most traditional now, I would say. So when
Wow.
I play now, I used to play in all these unusual harmonic systems. I don't know if you know about Olivier Messiaen's harmony. Is a French composer that has kind of a different symmetrical harmonic system that sounds very different from our Western scales. Even though he is in the West, he's French. But I used to do a lot of unusual time things. I'd have unusual groups. I'd mix electronics with the organ. And lately, I just play the organ. And I play more traditional and minimal than I ever have, I would say.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's beautiful. That's just your journey.
Yeah. I also think that I was trying really hard in those times to be great or to be something. And I think that that is a dangerous thing for an artist to be driven by.
Yeah, and it's also I think it has to do with, what you're exposed to as well. There's so much to explore. You might just start exploring something at a later point, if
Yeah,
that makes sense.
sure. I wonder what will come next for me. I actually recorded a lot of albums this year. They're all pretty traditional, but I have a solo organ album and a solo piano album.
Yeah.
So that's very different.
When you were trying to, I guess, I mean, you used that, you were being more, I guess, how do I say it? You exploratory in the beginning of the organ. Um, did you have to face any criticism from that, or was it more like people were accepting of that style? Because you know how, some elders can be when it comes to being,
Sure. I
yeah.
faced a lot of criticism. Um, I face criticism now. If you're doing something, the more people know about it, the more polarizing you become somehow. You know.
Yeah.
So when I did music with electronics, organ fans are very into traditional stuff. So my decision to be more traditional, I wanted to play that way, but it's also what organ fans to me want. For some people, the electronics was a tough sell, but for some other people, they would say that it was very different and innovative. You know, I try to strike the balance now. I keep my electronic music separate now, though,
Mhm.
mostly because when I'm on tour, it's really hard to do all of the electronic stuff, because it's lots of keyboards, the travel, I might not have the most luggage allowances, etc. Um, so when I play on the road now, I mostly just play organ, But I'm very into electronics. I do my stream. Actually, tonight I'll do my stream from my Facebook at 9. Um, but I'm kind of keeping them both separate right now. And organ fans have been more receptive, I would say, to the last 2 albums, which are traditional. And I want the music to connect with the most amount of people as possible, you know.
Yeah, that's the most
So,
important thing to touch the most, you know, connect with the audience and reach the maximum in a sense sometimes.
yeah. And I don't need it to give me anything like that anymore. Like I feel that way. I feel fulfilled with it, you know.
So
Like
when
I'm
you,
not looking. Go ahead.
oh no, I was going to ask you, so when you go on the road, your preference is you want there to be a Hammond B3 at the venue, and then that way you can just kind of, you don't even have
Yes,
to worry
that's
about
not
the other
always,
stuff.
it's not always possible. But
Right.
I've been lucky to get Hammond products. Like I was in Belgium in November and I was on tour with Dirk van der Linden, who's an excellent organist, but he's also a great guitarist. And he's the European rep for Hammond. So I was playing the new XK5, which is kind of their top of the line facsimile. It breaks down so you can travel with it, and it sounds excellent.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Is there like an organ museum or restaurant in Arizona? Do you know what I'm talking about?
There is an organ museum somewhere. You're not talking about MIM, are you? Or what is it called? Because that's where Joey was.
Well, I know there's like a pizzeria with
Musical
like a,
instrument museum. Is that what you're talking about?
I know there's like a pizzeria restaurant, and then there's someone playing organ right in the,
I think that is in San Francisco. It might be called the Royal Cuckoo Lounge.
okay,
Does
got
that
it.
sound?
I
Yeah.
saw something on TV once, and I thought it was probably like one of the most fascinating places that we have in our country. So I
It
just was,
might be Royal Cuckoo Lounge, which I believe is in San Francisco.
oh.
Yeah.
So when you were going about, you're saying that you play more traditional. Do you think you would call that growth and sort of like unlearning some things to get there, or was it just a natural process? I guess what I'm asking basically, was it just a natural evolution, or was it something you had to say, like, I'm consciously going to focus on playing more traditional in a sense?
I think it's both. I also think when I was playing more difficult forms of music or these things that I was talking about, that seemed, I don't want to say less authentic, but now when I play music, I'm kind of sitting there and I go out. It's like a meditation for me, something about it. When I touch it, my inner voice stops now. Like there's nothing, there's no thoughts. It's me, it's the presence of me sitting there at this instrument, but there's almost no conscious thought going on, I would say.
That's amazing.
It's also easier to do if you just hear something in your head and you just listen to that voice, you know. So I guess I don't have my cerebral music mind has less comment on my playing now.
Yeah. But that's something that takes a while to get to, and you have to have those moments where you're critical of what you're doing. And I guess, is it just that you get there, or, sometimes you become like, I need to just move forward from this mindset of being too critical. I think that's something musicians struggle with a lot, being in that space you're talking about.
So did I. And um, I used to be very critical of my playing.
Like
So critical
in the moment while you're playing, like,
all
or,
the time. I would be critical in the moment. I would be critical of it after, you name it. Um, so much that I kind of took a break from music a little bit. I never stopped playing gigs, but I stopped trying to improve. I wasn't practicing. I stopped booking gigs and I started studying other artistic things. And for some reason, when I gave up that big desire to be something, I almost could instantly do it. And from that point on, I think it's more developed now, but it never hurts me to play music now. I never say, even not that I sound as good every night, I'm sure, but it doesn't bother me. If I play with a
when was
band
that?
that's not that great, that doesn't bother me. For me, it's the feeling of doing it and how still my mind is. I'm much more addicted to that part now than even the music, which sounds like a crazy thing to say.
So it's funner too, and it's more meditative.
It's very meditative for me, and I'm a meditator, you know. I find it easy to have no, I find it easiest to have no mind when I'm playing music.
Yeah. That can kind of feel scary though to some people in a sense, because you're letting go of control. And we love control as human beings.
I don't want to say I'm a controlling person, but I'm very prim, proper, regimented, you name it. But for some reason, I'm able to detach from that ego part when I'm playing music, and it doesn't feel like that person anymore.
When did that happen for you when you started exploring other artistic forms? Was this in like the last, 15 years or
No,
10 years?
so I'm 52. When I started to get into these other things, I would say that I was 31 or 32.
Got it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And they were pattern-based artistic things. They were physical. And it made me think of music more physically too. The organ is very physical. So I really learned to conserve my physical energy. I was a lot heavier, and being thinner has helped me with the physical things of the organ. To me, it helps my mind too. Nothing against people that are not thin, of course. Um, yeah. So I started to think of music as a physical exercise, you know.
Mm.
Um,
Well, it
but
is
being
physical because, like, I mean, like, I'm definitely, like, I was used to have the worst posture for like 25 years playing, and I had to have surgery because the nerves were so messed up from that.
That's what
I
I
don't
mean.
do it
Holding your
anymore. I
body the
changed
right
everything.
way. Yeah, that's what I mean. So I started to hold my body the right way. For me, I would hold tension in different parts of my bodies. Like for pianists, you probably see them with a shoulder up all the time.
Yeah. Hmm.
Like I almost have a permanent thing there from doing that. So if I can stop my mind a little bit and be meditative, my body gets still. Even though it's still doing physical things, because the organ is so physical, I'm trying to conserve my energy. I'm trying not to get carried away. And it's easy to get carried away on the organ. It's easy for it to get away from you, I think. I'm trying not to be too loud. I'm trying to be sensitive to everything else that's going on. I'm trying to be as present as I can be. And that has been my biggest growth lately, is how present I can be when it's going on.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I mean, this is the what you're talking
It's
about.
very esoteric, you know, and you can't really measure it in any way.
But I mean, there is a psychological component of the music, which is, I guess, what we're talking about. And I wish more musicians would talk about it, or I wish they talked about it a little more if musicians are getting some sort of formal education,
Mm.
because it really runs parallel to the technical side of improvisation. That if you can't let go, how are you going to be able to hear, and how are you going to be able to really improvise? And when you have this other brain part that still doesn't stop.
Totally. And you know, when I was very young, I was fortunate to have a lesson with Kenny Werner, and I studied. Maybe I took 10 lessons with him. I don't know, between 7 and 10. This is even before effortless mastery came out.
Before.
Yeah. Um, and I remember the first lesson I had with him. He's a very enigmatic guy. I don't know if you've ever hung out with him. Um,
I played with him for like one or a couple songs when I was in school, but we didn't really talk. Like, he just came in and
that's
played with
cool,
us.
though. That's cool.
He didn't
I
need to say
remember
anything.
you got a flavor. He's a very mystical guy. And I remember the first time I sat down to play for him, I came with my parents to New York. I think I was 17 years old. He was recording with someone at Quad Sound, which was a big studio in New York. I'm not even sure it's still there. Um, I sat down. I remember I played My Romance. I'm sure it sounded okay because I could play okay when I was a younger guy. Like I understood the harmony pretty much. When I got done playing, I said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Werner. I was so nervous to play in front of you." And he said something amazing to me that really snapped me out of that. He said, Do you think a person on the other side of the world cares how your piano playing sounds? And they probably don't. And he was talking about this thing. He was talking about not putting so much weight and importance on your artistry or your piano playing or anything because everything is impermanent like that. Um, yeah. He also, before, I'm sorry, am I talking too long about it?
Not at all. I love everything you're saying. You're talking about impermanence, which is such an important thing, but please keep going.
One more little story to illustrate what I'm talking about. Before Effortless Mastery, what Kenny Werner would teach, and maybe it's even in this book, I'm not sure, but it's called the five finger exercise. Have you ever heard of that?
Mm-hmm. Think so.
So, what you used to do, you wouldn't even play when you had lessons with Kenny. You would go there and you would drop your fingers on the piano like this. And you would have to do it with no want, for lack of a better description. You were trying to drop all of your negative baggage. I don't care how these people think I sound. Um, I don't care that I can't play this chord change so well, you name it. And he would ask you questions like, what temperature is the key? So, what he's trying to do, what he was talking about, and I think what I'm talking about to some degree at this point, is taking your focus from down here or here and putting it up here.
Yeah.
And that is the most invaluable lesson I ever got about music. And I only do that now. Like, I don't think about scales. I pretty much don't practice. I have to learn people's music, but I don't have time to practice at all, usually. I usually am writing for deadlines, both words and music, um, and traveling. So when I play music, it's all coming from what temperature is the key.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there can't be that separation between you and your instrument because the ego, when I say ego, I mean the thinking mind takes over and stuff. It's got to be one. And I find that like even when I look at master musicians, like they just walk up to their instrument and they just start playing and it's just it seems like from the first note or something. You know what I mean?
I do. I think a lot of them are accessing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There has to be something else going on except like these other things that we're talking about. And some of them may have thought about it, and some of them may have just got there naturally, and they just never messed with it.
I agree.
Yeah, but that's the beauty. Everyone has their own journey
Journey.
about it.
Yeah.
So, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about inspiration as well because
Huh.
we get inspired. What's something that never fails to inspire you when it comes to music or art that you can always count on if you're having like a moment of stagnation or something.
I don't really ever feel creatively stagnant because I'm playing with amazing people all the time. And I
Mm.
kind of have to be creative, I guess.
Yeah.
So I never have a, I can never think on a time when I didn't feel inspired by music. Um, I am inspired when I see kindness, or especially if someone is not kind, the other person does respond with kindness,
Oh, that's yeah, kill him with kindness.
which doesn't always work, I found out. But um, I'm inspired by humans reaching for things with a certain level of detachment and overcoming obstacles. You know Marcus Aurelius?
I don't.
So I think he was a Roman emperor, and he was considered maybe the first Stoic philosopher.
Oh,
I
stoicism.
think I hope I'm not misquoting, but I think he said the obstacle is the way. And I think what our human experience is all of that. We're trying to overcome something, but really what we're trying to overcome is the way we perceive it, or our resistance to it,
I think part of it too is knowing you can be with that discomfort instead of fighting it.
which is not an easy thing for me personally.
Yeah.
I'm working, that's all I practice now is that.
Being okay with the discomfort.
Exactly.
I think what we fear as humans is that we're not going to be able to be okay and go forward with that. But we are resilient. There's something within us that
I would
like
have to
just
agree.
unconditionally can do it. So I think that's important to think about.
It's true. I should think about that more. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah. Well, personal development is something that, kind of goes hand in hand with some of the things we're talking about. But the truth of the matter is, and this is by no fault of anybody, I feel like, there's, among the masses, a lot of people are just kind of going through the motions of life
Sure.
without ever
But
having thought about it, you
we're
know.
told how to act, you know.
It's just what we're brought
Yeah.
up to be.
Yeah. And it's hard to, that's the ego. That's the mind. That's the idea of ourself
Yeah.
after the presence or the being, you know. So I think the whole people that are enlightened, they can quiet that part of themselves,
Hmm.
I
Well,
think.
you'd also mentioned you meditate. Can I ask you what type of meditation you do?
I do a
Is it
lot
like,
of different ones. Um, I do a lot of breathing meditations, where I will breathe in and out in some sort of succession. I hold my breath sometimes during the breathing exercises. I do a lot of qigong. Um, I study a very strange Taoist. I study a couple unusual old Taoist techniques. One is called sinew metamorphosis and muscle changing classic, which is a kind of breathing and chi flow movement, but it's very esoteric. Nobody knows if it's really real. Nobody knows if it really works. You got to do it for a long time. Um,
I took a class on TM. I like took the course,
I've never
Transcendental
done
Meditation.
that. Yeah, I know of it.
Yeah. That's a
Uh-huh.
very interesting one
I
because
know.
yeah, they're all, but there's so many of them. There's so many
Because
ways
you
to meditate.
actually project with TM, right?
What was that?
You do astral projection with TM. You leave your body.
I've had that maybe happen once.
That's a lot.
Yeah, maybe twice, but no, but it's really great because I feel that as human beings, we're not really designed to go 16 hours and then sleep for 8, and that
Sure.
16 hours is insane.
Yeah.
Uh, so it just kind of helps you like balance. It's a just recharge, but also very valuable before you go to play.
Right.
Very helpful for pain management, stress,
Yeah.
all good things like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Uh-huh.
yeah, meditation's very important.
Yeah.
So, what's on the agenda for 2025 for you? What are you looking forward to? Anything um, that's exciting you when you think about, oh, this is coming up?
I'm going to the West Coast. I actually have a place in Los Angeles now, which I really love.
Awesome.
Um, I was luckily spared from the fires, but it was a tough scene for LA the past few weeks, obviously. But I have very close friends there. Um, and I play in unusual bands. I play with the drummer from Tool, Danny Carey there. I get to play with all the tribal tech guys there, Scott Kinsey. I play with Gary Novak there, who's an amazing drummer. And Jimmy Vivino lives there, and I used to work a lot with him and his brother here when they were in New York, so that's very nostalgic to me. Um, I love the weather there. I like to go to the NAMM show. I like that scene. I'm doing that. I am going to Europe the whole month of April. I'll be all over the place.
Beautiful.
Um, yeah. And then I don't know what I'm going to do after that. I haven't decided yet.
I feel like East Coast and West Coast really are yin and yang.
I describe it in a funny way if I can tell a kind of joke. So I live in New York on 14th Street, which is you can hear the sirens, the noise. And if people are yelling at each other, they're like, they're speaking badly. And I live in Venice Beach, which has a pretty bad crystal meth problem. So
Oh
the
man.
yelling outside my window there is just. So when people ask me the difference between Los Angeles and New York, um, I tell them about the yelling.
No,
There's
Brian,
more
this has been,
space.
oh, sorry, what were you saying?
There's more space in LA.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So, this has been fantastic, and I really appreciate how honest you were. And
Why
sometimes I
not?
do these podcasts, and it's we had a conversation which I really value, as I think that's where the best material comes from for the listener.
Me too. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, man.
No problem.